Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Easy Conversations podcast, a podcast about having easy conversations. I'm your host, Furkan Dandia. In this week's episode, I sit down with Ben Steinbacher. Ben is a coach and he shares his own story of what brought him to coaching. Ben and I talk about the importance of working with men, especially where men struggle with expressing their emotions and some of the trauma they can carry. Ben and I also discuss how, as children, some of us can take on the role of caretakers and how that role continues to show up in our adult relationships. And what are some of the things we can do to navigate through taking on that role? I really hope you can get a lot out of this episode. And if at the end you could leave a 5-star review, I would truly appreciate it. Hey, Ben, welcome to the Easy Conversations podcast. I appreciate you taking the time. Super grateful for us to be able to finally connect and have this conversation. And I've been really excited to chat with you. And I know we've kind of gone back and forth to set this up. So I'm excited we get this opportunity today. But before we get into it, I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, what it is that you do, and then we'll kind of carry on with the conversation from there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Ooh, yeah, I think we first connected like a month and a half ago. I'm glad we were able to reconnect. It's nice. But I'm Ben Steinbacher, and I've been doing men's work and coaching and leadership and mentoring and everything leadership related for the last 6 or so years. And what I've settled on, what most lights my heart on fire, and what I'm doing now is I teach men how to tap into their heart and discover their purpose and their gifts and the things that make them unique. Because most men growing up, they don't always get that from their dad anymore. Their dad telling them, hey, these are your gifts. This is what makes you special, the way it was done in like old cultures. And so I help men discover those things, figure out what their purpose is, and then teach them how to build a life around it.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And like, can you share some of the things you do? Like,
Definitely.
How does one person, like, or especially a man, like, tap into that internally and find that purpose and what makes them special? Like, I think, a lot of guys I work with or talk to struggle with that. So I'm curious to hear what your process is.
Yeah, definitely. I'll give a couple key snippets without going into the whole thing or making it too long. But one is, we are almost always on our cell phone. We're attached to our cell phone. The most successful CEOs waste at least 20 hours a week. They say the most effective, productive people with social media, with all these things. And so the first thing is figuring out a way to create space in life for people to know who they are. And every single culture has this. Like, even if you look at Jesus in the Bible, he took 40 days, he got away. A lot of cultures have some type of journey you'll go on, or mission, or pilgrimage or something. But for me, it looks like the first week or two is just creating space, having men take 20, 30 minutes by themselves, go for a walk, do whatever, slow down and just first decompress so that you're not moving at such a fast speed, so that you actually know how to tap into your heart and so that you're not thinking and overthinking all the time. And then if you're a man, a leader, someone in business, you own a business, a human being, whatever, the one thing that controls how fast we grow is how quickly we can get feedback and apply feedback. So especially if you're a business or a man, anything, intentionally setting up times, places, systems, whatever, where you get feedback. So I have men reach out to people that are closest to them, maybe people from their past, and really ask them questions like, I'll give them a template, but like, what things in life am I the best at? What do you most come to me for? What am I known for? And also, what are some of the areas that I could be a better friend, a better brother, a better husband, a better cousin? And when you understand how other people see you, you start to see the parts of yourself that are common and that are not so common. Because there's things that we do that we don't even realize how unique or special they are, just because that's just the way we operate. But But when multiple other people tell us like, hey, you're really good at these three things, and you get that from like multiple people, then you start to understand, okay, these are the things that I'm great at. But it's not just your gifts. You also have to know what are your passions. And I think as men, we're taught to shove down and ignore our passions, like they don't matter. But passions are your truth. They're what you're willing to die for. They're the thing that we almost minimize and teach people their passions don't matter. But your passions have been carefully either given to you or developed over 20, 30 years. They're there for a reason. So you need to know your passions, your gifts. And I could keep going. But some of the biggest things too, and I'll just wrap up with this, is you have to know how to create a life that's conducive to bringing these things to life. Okay. So like looking at the people that are closest to you, your friends, your family members, the activities you do, the different things, and looking at your life and seeing what structure, what system, is there room, what's set up for you to actually thrive. Like, do you have at least one person in your life, another male friend that you can just go and take walks with that's going to be real with you? If you don't have someone in your life that's going to be real with you, you have to find that person. Mm-hmm. If you don't have people in your life that you look up to that are where you are, you've got to find ways to start getting there. Like, that's why a lot of people work with me or the program or coaching, is because a lot of times, like, I've just been on this journey a little bit longer. Like, I've just spent 7 years doing 8 or 9 different jobs trying to find my purpose. So I'm able to guide people and help them. And they're able to be with a group of other men who are also doing this, where they can get feedback, support. And the other thing I would offer is, where are you in life as far as like free time to sharpen your sword? Whatever it is you're great at, whatever it is you want to be great at, even if you have these skills, but you understand that you don't know effective communication. Like, I have friends that have joined Toastmasters, which is just a group where you go and you practice speaking. But like, where are you actively developing the missing skills? Because most people are one skill away from really breaking through. Right. Like, you can be Nike and have the best shoes in the world, but let's say they'd never learned how to market them. They would have just been a sneaker that got dropped on a waffle iron. Mm-hmm. Like, they need to learn how to market and sell them. And someone had to come up with a just do it in order for them to take off. Yeah. Yeah. So it's understanding those other things. And usually you look at someone, a group of people, and you go through a program like this where you intimately get to know each other, and you have a bunch of brothers out there, and they can help speak to these things or help you discover too. Like, hey man, you're really good at this, this, and this, but it sounds like you just don't know how to convey that. Like, do you ever speak in front of people? No. Okay. Well, how about even in this group? Let's practice that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's, I mean, that's a lot of things you mentioned there. And I do appreciate the fact that, you know, when you first talked about men being able to take that space for themselves, I think it's important, because in that space of whether it's stillness or being alone, where you can kind of remove yourself from distractions, you do end up reflecting quite a bit, and a lot of things come to you, right? Whether or not you're ready to accept them, that, I mean, that could take time. We all kind of have to go through our own journey of being able to accept the truth, but it is in those moments when the truth really comes to you, right? And it will keep coming back until you're willing to accept it. And I think it's equally important to seek that feedback from people that really see you, so you can understand how you're showing up in your relationships and whether or not that is the way you want to show up. So I think all those things you touched on are very important. I guess along these lines, like, what, you know, you kind of touched on it briefly, but what brought you to this space of wanting to help men and the space of work you're doing?
I love that. I could take you back to my childhood. So I think one thing that I started realizing along the way is how few male leaders, mentors, whatever there are in life. Like, I believe I had 2 male teachers growing up as a kid, and the rest were female, and that's all right. That's all right. But it's just, there wasn't that many men around me for me to learn how to be a man. And I think the first time my parents got separated, I realized like I didn't always get to be around my dad, and that was hard because I was like, okay, I'm a little kid. Who do I learn to be a man from? I'm not always around him. And then as I grew up, it was just such a common story. Men not always having their father around, or if their father is around, he's not emotionally present, or there's so much there.
Yeah.
And even within working with kids, there are so few males that step into the position of teacher, coach, mentor, whatever. And as I was on this journey, I realized about the age of 26, I want to say, I got into a position of leadership, and my job was to create other people that were leaders, and especially in sales. And sales is a lot of rejection.
Yeah.
Sales is a lot of confidence. It's a lot of courage. It's a lot of things that you just can't teach somebody. 3 steps to confidence, 3 steps to courage, 3 steps to embracing who you are. Because sales is never selling a product. It is, but it's sales. You are selling yourself. The product is it just happens. But like salespeople are always buying you.
Yeah.
They're buying you first, or they're not buying you. And so I thought, I was just like, okay, just teach people I'm good at sales. This is going to be easy. Here's all you do. Here's what I do. But I realized, like, for the next 6 or 7 years, it was there, and then it was nonprofits, and then it was these other positions. Is a lot of men didn't know how to sell themselves because they weren't confident in who they were. They had no clue who they were. They didn't know what their emotions were. They were trying to be these things they thought they were supposed to be, where if they just have enough sex and make enough money and get enough success, then they'll be happy and they'll be fulfilled and they'll be great. And that was never the case.
Right.
I've rarely met one man who's actually fulfilled by those things. And so what I started teaching men in order for them to be successful, and then I transitioned in the nonprofit world and started doing some coaching and mentoring and different types of stuff there, is that a lot of times there was so much wounding.
Yeah.
There was so much men believing that they had to be certain things, men being told that they shouldn't express their emotions, men not having expressed their emotions and having 10, 15, 20 years worth of stuff stored up to the point where they were so, when a little kid falls down, cries, gets hurt, they gets hurt, they cry for 15, 20 seconds, and they jump back up and go back to playing. When we naturally, I'm sure you know this, I'm just explaining for all the people out there, maybe this is their first time hearing it. We naturally are taught how to express our emotions, and when we do, we let go of them. When we're abused, when something happens, when we're told don't cry, when we're told don't talk about it, don't share your feelings, and we shove down an emotion for weeks or months or years, that's when it turns into depression. That's when it turns into these states of being, deep anger, not trusting ourselves, these things that it was really just a bunch of small times where we as men were told don't share your feelings, and we got so disconnected from our emotions that now there's just a permanent state of anger, pain, hurt, sadness, fear, not knowing ourselves. And so that was the work. That was what I didn't realize I was signing up for, but I started realizing all those things in myself, and I realized, okay, if I can't work through them, I can't help anyone else through them. And then I really cared about seeing other men not go through some of those things and be set free and be able to be in relationships and have the life that they desire. Yeah.
And I guess when we talked the first time, like, I appreciate you sharing your whole journey. And one of the things that I picked up on was, especially when you mentioned that your parents separated when you were a kid, it sounded like, and we touched on it, that you automatically took on the role of being the caretaker.
Oh yeah.
And and that's something you've done for a while. It's, that's kind of
Yeah.
what we talked about. So,
Yeah.
like, how does that feel, aware of it and acknowledging it, but at the same time, like, do you still see those patterns and tendencies in your current life? And then the third question around that would be like, what made you take on that role? Like, are you able to pinpoint any given moment in life, or it was just something you kind of just had to do to survive, or grow up?
Yeah. And let's say someone's never heard that term before. Could you just define for you what caretaker means in this context?
Yeah, I think for me, and the reason why I resonate with it is because that's the role I've taken on. I think as a child, personally, in my experience, just being able to, protect others. Being the eldest child, I just took on this role of protecting everyone, and then that way I didn't have to focus on myself. So, it's almost a form of avoidance where you could focus on other people and take care of them, and just feel good about yourself. And then, when others aren't willing to accept that, you almost feel abandoned. So that's how I perceive, or at least look at it for, in
Yeah.
this context.
Yeah. Thank you. Why did I start doing it? That's a great question. I don't know if it was out of necessity, or maybe just my mind at that time as a little kid thought it was necessity. I think it was a recognition of hurt and wanting to do something about it.
Hmm.
And I also wonder how much of it was societal, as far as, like, as a man, it's your job to make the women around you happy. It's your job to make people around you happy. It's your job to be strong. It's your job to. And so I always just looked at it as like, that's what being a good man was. It was like shoving down my emotions, not expressing my feelings, not worrying about me, and just helping everyone around me. And I'm not going to say how much they did or didn't need my help. I just, at that time, thought that's what I was supposed to do. I thought if I'm a good, even at, I think it was 8 or 9, like being a good boy, a good man, I don't see my dad around the house now. Someone's got to be the man of the house.
Yeah.
I think. And so I just started thinking that way. And I think I thought that I needed to step into the shoes of what I thought it meant to be a man. And I was so little, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. My parents got back together, and then got separated again, and was naturally a peacemaker. And I know that's common of some middle children. And I think that was the other piece too, is I just thought I wanted to do everything in my power to make things as easy for everyone as possible. I didn't want my little sister to have to experience any type of pain. I didn't want my older sister. I didn't want I just wanted everything to be good for everyone. But at that time, I didn't even know what good was. I was just a kid. I didn't know sharing your feelings is good. I didn't know. I just thought making everything as calm as possible, as much as possible, was what was needed. And so I did it. And
I know, thanks for sharing that. And I think, we tend to take on roles, or develop defense mechanisms as children, obviously protect ourselves. And then often those carry into adulthood, right? So one of the things I've noticed with myself is I still had that tendency of being the caretaker in my adult relationships. Did you have that experience as well? And and how did that impact you or the people you were in relationships with? Like, and at what point did you start recognizing that similar pattern?
Yeah, that's a great question. So even getting into leadership, I think what made me somewhat decent at leadership was also the thing that I had to break in order to become good at leadership. And that natural desire to help others and to see them feel at peace or have the best results or be happy. And started doing it like as of I think like where I really saw it was romantically showing up. But then when you're in leadership, you're in a relationship with every single person that's around you. And so you can be coaching or mentoring or leading 8 people at a time. And you're like, holy crap, this exact same problems are popping up in all 8 of these relationships. What's the commonality? Oh, me. Mm-hmm. And so that's when it like really just was like so obvious that was hard to ignore. But I think most of my relationships before then looked like me talking a lot with women, and just trying to be funny and be interesting. And maybe if I was enough of that, then I could just make them happy all the time.
Yeah.
And so I really started noticing it romantically. I think I remember being 24, 25, and a friend was like, you're not a good listener. And like a female friend, I was like, what do you think? I'm the best listener. Like all I do is like talk and stuff. And she's like, yeah, it's not listening. And that's like when I started realizing like, wow, like now I understand, like I was uncomfortable with other people's feelings. And so when they would share their feelings, I would try and fill the silence with something to make them feel better, or I would try to just solve their problems.
Yeah, exactly.
And not allow them to experience their problems. And yeah, that was probably awful for the people around me more than it was me at that time. I didn't know any better. I thought it like, oh, I'm doing a good job of making everyone's problems better. But for them, I'm sure it felt pretty awful to not be heard. And that was a lot of years of that.
Yeah, no, and I can again agree with that. That's kind of where the realization happened for me, is where, you know, anytime someone came to me with a problem, I'm like, okay, here's what you should do, right? Or let me solve it for you. And and that's where, you know, it could be frustrating or even smothering, in the sense where, you know, especially if you're in a romantic relationship, and or even relationship with your siblings or friends, and you're constantly trying to solve their problems. Like you said, you're not really listening. Maybe they don't want a solution. Maybe they just want to be able to rant or complain about whatever they're dealing with, and they'll get to the solution themselves. But so, yeah, and that's, you know, I guess for me, having that awareness now, I'm more mindful of it. I wouldn't say it's something that I've completely been able to like, get over or solve, because it's just been years and years of patterns, right? So, but just being mindful of it. I guess in your case, you all obviously have the awareness too. What are some things you've done or continue to do like over the years to be able to kind of manage that tendency?
That's a great question. What have I done? I think the biggest thing that I've done is just really believe this one belief, which is that 80% of the time when people talk, they just want to be heard. And like I make it my focus. Like if we're talking and then I start thinking about what I'm going to say and you haven't finished talking, I make myself let go of that response and that thought and just go back to listening. Like it's like painful at times, but I just make myself like, no, it's better for you to listen the next 30 seconds, minute, however long he talks, or however long they talk, if I'm talking to someone else, and just be with them and get to the end of it and have nothing to say, but thank you for sharing, or just silence and just allowing it to be silent and just letting them know that they were heard. And so for me, it's just like I'm making it a priority. Like I don't make talking that much of a priority compared to how much I used to. I still talk, but it's that realization that I don't need to say anything. And it's funny because a lot of times when someone says something really deep and I just sit there with them and I don't say anything, or maybe I'll say thank you and that's it, and I'll just sit there in silence with them for like 10, 15 seconds, they'll usually keep going and then go deeper, and they're like, oh, thank you. And like, I haven't said anything. And that's taken a lot of pressure off.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is very tough to practice. But yeah, you know, again, one of the things I realize is just forming a response in my head before the person's even finish talking and have a
Yeah.
solution ready for them.
Uh-huh.
And that is, my cue to be like, no, this is where you need to just keep your mouth shut and keep listening. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely something I think we can both agree on. That's important to be mindful of, is when you're listening, just trying to listen to what the other person is asking for, or
Yeah.
maybe not. They're probably not even asking for anything. They just want to be heard. And
Yeah.
that's the practice there in terms of listening. I guess for people that kind of struggle in a similar fashion, you've listed out some things they can work on
Yeah.
as far as the listening goes. But how do you deal with the past in terms of what you got you to this point, right? Like, obviously in your situation, you like you mentioned, you wanted to be the peacekeeper. Unfortunately, you had to experience your parents separating twice. Everyone kind of has their own experience from childhood, but what are some things they can do to kind of mitigate those tendencies?
Oof, mitigate those tendencies. So I think that underneath it all, the heart,
Mm-hmm,
like the heart will always betray itself.
mm-hmm,
And so for me, the reason that I did that and kept doing it was because I was insecure in some ways.
mm-hmm.
And so the feeling of being needed felt good. The feeling of giving advice, of helping people, it felt good. I thought I was doing it for them, but I was able to realize, no, you're doing this for you. This just
Mm-hmm.
makes you feel good, Ben, because you're needed. You have a role. You're special. You're important now because you help people. When you start spending time by yourself and knowing who you are and validating yourself, you don't need that from other people now.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't take time to validate yourself, anytime someone else validates you or anytime something else happens that makes you feel validated, it's like a drug.
Yeah.
More of that, more of that, more of that. And I don't think that we as men especially are taught to celebrate ourselves, to be proud of ourselves. That's like one of the biggest things I do as a coach is I just tell people I'm proud of them a lot
Mm-hmm.
until they actually like start feeling proud of themselves about like all the hard work they're putting in. Because most of us are not underachievers. Like most people work their butts off or they're always busy. We have a society that's busy.
Mm-hmm.
As this on the spectrum, we're
Yeah.
more busy and hardworking and working more than 40 hours a week than we are underworking.
Yeah.
And that's obviously taking into consideration COVID and everything. And some people have lost their jobs, but just as a whole, that's where we were at.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's just learning to like be proud of myself, to celebrate myself, to feel good about myself, to make it my own responsibility to feel good about myself and not get that from other places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you touched on that whole external validation piece, because that
Yeah.
ultimately it boils down to that, because we feel that abandonment, we want that dependency on others, and that validation that we're still needed, right? We avoid that fear of rejection. And then going full circle, when you do take that time and that space of being alone, you can find that within yourself. The other important thing you mentioned, and I do agree with you, it doesn't happen often, especially, I can only speak for men, but we don't celebrate ourselves. And, one of the things I tell people is like, celebration doesn't necessarily have to be like, people standing around cheering you on. You could celebrate yourself, whether it's, having a nice dinner or spending
Yeah.
time with your friends. It could be anything where you're just taking that time to that moment of recognizing your successes and really embracing it, because quite often we spend a lot of time talking about our flaws or the mistakes we make, but we
Yeah.
don't take that moment to celebrate ourselves, and it's really important. And often if other people are getting threatened because you're celebrating yourself, that is not on you, that's on them, and their insecurities, to be able to recognize that. But it shouldn't, like, you celebrating yourself should not make others uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to touch on what you said around celebration there. I think that was really good that you offered some practical examples. So I think that's something that I was like, okay, well, what does this even mean, celebrate myself? And like you talked about, like at the end of a long week, let's say you just allow yourself, say like, wow, I worked hard this week. I'm going to invite some friends over and grill out some steaks and drink a beer and just be like, oh, this is good.
Yeah.
Like I put in some work. Or even at the end of a long day, like just rewarding yourself. Let's say you've worked your butt off, you've worked out for the day, just allowing yourself to like, sometimes I'll just go by a grocery store and buy one of my favorite drinks. Like just a kombucha or like some kind of like fancy drink or something. It's just like, yo, you worked hard today. Here you go. Here's a treat.
Yeah.
Same with like little kids. Like we learn it so well, little kids. Like little kids are good. They have a good day. We're like, if you get along with your brother and you put away your toys, I'll give you a cookie at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's just doing that with ourselves too. It's like giving ourselves some moments to actually feel good about and like take the space to like, yeah, just feel good about what we've done.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm having mic issues here, but we're good. Yeah, no, I agree. And I do take that time to treat myself as well. Because it's important, you know, and you need to be able to do it for yourself rather than hoping, you know, for other people to do it. Because again, like I said, we spend so much time obsessing over our mistakes or our faults, yet we don't spend enough time celebrating ourselves. So that's, you know, that's amazing you mentioned that. And I guess, you know, coming to an end here, but you know, for people that want to get a hold of you or find you, or even like are looking for a coach, how can people find you, whether it's online or social media?
Yeah. So on Facebook, I'm Ben Steinbacher, STEINBACHER. And on Instagram, I'm Ben_Steinbacher_. And yeah, either one. And even if you don't know if you're ready for a coach yet, but you know that you have a question from this podcast, or there's something I can do, or there's an area of your life that you want an opinion, feel free, reach out. I love helping people that genuinely want to make a difference or want to do something with their life or want to take steps forward.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And you know, when this episode comes out, I'll tag you as well. So for people that don't know how to spell your last name, they
Lovely.
know they know how to find you.
Yeah.
Ben, thank you again for doing this. I really appreciate it. And, you know, I appreciate you sharing your own experiences, your own stories, and being vulnerable to kind of really touch on some of the things that I'm sure have been hard over the years to deal with. So, you know, I really appreciate that. And I'm super grateful again for us to have this conversation today.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. As always, please subscribe to the podcast if you enjoy the episodes, or leave a comment in the comment section. I always love hearing from you. Thank you again, and until next week.